As we begin, I will ask everyone to please silence cell phones. That was a good cue there. And other electronic devices. I'm going to do the same as I'm talking. I remind council that our procedure bylaw prescribes the use of electronics during council meetings. It's 6:30 p.m. I'll call this council planning meeting to order on March 9th, 2026. Brighton Council's work takes place on the traditional Indigenous territory of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe, now of Alderville, and we are thankful to be able to work and live on this land. We offer a land acknowledgement as a way to recognize, respect, and honor this territory, the treaties, the original occupants, their ancestors, and the historic connections they still have with these lands and waters. We are grateful for the opportunity that these lands and waters present to the people of Brighton and grateful to work in partnership with Indigenous communities on their stewardship and sustainability. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council approve the March 9th, 2026 planning meeting agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Members of Council, have you any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. We have no delegations listed this evening. There's no statutory public meeting, which brings us to planning and development reports. The first report is with regard to an amendment to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 214 Ontario Street. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Mayor and Council, no, there's no further information from the report.
Thank you, sir. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that Council give draft approval to the subdivision condominium application sub 01 2025, subject to conditions referenced in this report. Pass the amending zoning bylaw as presented in this council agenda. Adopt the official plan amendment number OPA 02 2022 through passing of the adoption bylaw as presented in this council agenda, and direct staff to give notice of adoption, including forwarding a record of adoption to the County of Northumberland for its final approval. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wilden?
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed among the conditions, there's reference to some species. And I'm hoping, this is maybe not a question even for now, but I'm hoping that you can address the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee with these at our next meeting.
Walsh?
Through the Mayor and Council, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Have a discussion in the context of the 2024 PPS, Provincial Policy Statement issued under Section 3 of the Planning Act, as well as the recently approved official plan amendment number 1 of the County of Northumberland. And I failed to mention, Mayor, in the preamble there, that the applicant does have their consultant in the gallery as a deputation with presentation.
Was this not already received as a deputation at the statutory public meeting?
It was, that's correct.
Is it necessary to do it twice?
I'm not hearing that it is, but available upon your pleasure.
Members of Council? We've seen it. Do we want to see it again? No. Any other questions from members of Council? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. To Paul, the site plan that we have here, is this the final, is this what we will, or that the developer will be beholden to? I believe at the last time I did ask a question regarding a second egress coming in or out of this subdivision, and I don't see any changes there. Was it not required, or did I miss something? Did I misinterpret something the last time?
Director Walsh?
Thank you.
Through the Mayor to Council, so there's one egress, ingress, and that's intended to be a public road. And that public road will be shared between the subject lands and the lands to the south, as per draft conditions of approval. So those two landowners were going to either need to get together and come up with a cost sharing arrangement, or one will need to be imposed by the municipality. As described in the report, it's in the community's interest to have only one entrance there. Ontario Street is an arterial road, and it's important to minimize the number of entrances, because that really makes a strong determination as to what expedites the flow of traffic and what maintains a safe corridor. It also helps with active transportation by minimizing the number of driveways that would otherwise interfere with sidewalks and multi-use pathways. So for those reasons, one entrance is restricted, and it would be public so that it can be shared for the bulk of the lands around 214 Ontario. And yeah, so the final plan as presented has 11 blocks on it. And there will be, as per the report and draft conditions, some amendments required perhaps to add additional blocks where a sanitary lift station would be better located as required by the draft conditions. That sanitary lift station, again, is intended to be shared. The sewer shed needs to be finally defined and shown, but you'll see numbers in the draft conditions with the expectation of what scale of development is anticipated. And this is partly through conversations with the adjoining owner. So there's interest from the adjoining owner to do that, although nothing fully committal through an agreement. That agreement would come to council. So, you know, council would still be probably seeing more on that, or will need to see more on that. But it is a requirement of the conditions, and the applicant's aware of that, is in agreement with it.
Thank you both. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Last time we talked about this, I remember I asked, could we designate a space for a future bus stop? And there was very brief mention of that in the report, but I don't see it anywhere in the plans. Now, I remember you had said something about close to the bike racks. I just want to double check and make sure that we have in fact asked for a transit stop designation for some area so that we don't forget.
Director Walsh.
Through all the conditions in the report, I don't remember seeing a reference to a transit stop. We have asked for that in a couple of other places where there is a higher density located on urban arterial roadways. Don't know if that was explicitly identified in the draft conditions or not. There's a high volume number of conditions in there. So I'd have to double back to see. That's not working for me.
If I may, Mayor.
Councillor Wheeldon.
But
I did see reference to it just kind of in generic language at the top of the transportation section of the report. So I know that it was mentioned. It said the proposed development would facilitate. Oh, it says cycling network is an interconnected system of cycling and walking routes that provides access to major activity and employment areas and to future public transit. So presumably there is a thought to that or an eye to that in the future, but I'm very conscious as representative on Quinte Transit that we need to plan for this or we might not have functional routes in future.
yeah, yes, that's a very good point, and certainly not intended to exclude that. Ultimately, the transit stop would be within the road right of way, and learning more in the last little while, last couple of years on these things with the help of some other applicants, that the design of the transit stops no longer really involve a lay-by because the buses have a hard time getting back into the traffic. So there wasn't apparently a need for any specific design criterion within the draft conditions, but it is important to have a transit stop there. We'd have to work with Quinte Transit to identify a preferred location. But you know, it'll be an evolving issue that we can track going forward.
Members of council, I see that the proponent's representative keeps popping his hand up to answer this question. Is it okay with council if we permit that? Please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Just very briefly, it's under condition number
If
15.
you could just reintroduce yourself for us,
Oh,
please.
my
Thank you.
apologies.
Yeah.
Paul Demchek with Pecuniary Planning and Management. I'm the land use planning consultant on behalf of the applicant.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. So under condition number 15, I believe it is, it's a generic condition, but it does, and I'll just quickly read it. It's under the transportation heading. that has been provided to council tonight. So it states the owner acknowledges that the municipality of Brighton may amend this draft approval to be in conformity with any secondary plan or other long-range plan considerations, particularly a shared street network in accordance with the Planning Act. So I would just suggest to council that obviously there's still a secondary plan unfolding. I'm assuming as part of that secondary plan, there will be identifications for obviously the future street networks in this area, but also potential transit stops. And if that's the direction of council, we would be more than happy to implement it through this particular condition.
Thank you. Further questions from members of council on the motion? Councillor Wright.
I'm not sure who would answer this question, but through you, Mr. Mayor. I have some twofold concerns about the live works. And I love a good live work because I live and work in the same place. I'm seeing still the 13 parking sites. They are accessible directly from Ontario Street. I just want confirmation of that. And if we're so concerned about too many streets accessing Ontario Street, we will then have 13 parked cars potentially at various times backing into Ontario Street and trying to access traffic. I've seen these live-in works when I was living in Milton, and they can be very busy spots. The footprint for each of these, if two hairdressers were to take over those spaces, they could each put in 5 to 6 chairs in that footprint, which would then take up potentially all of those parking spaces in a heartbeat. So I'm just wondering, like at peak times, where are people supposed to park? And is there not any concerns about people who are parking then backing into Ontario Street rather than finding some other parking somewhere inside the development to accommodate the live-in works?
Director Walsh.
Through the Mayor and Council, good questions. There will be no parking permitted on Ontario Street, so there will be no backing out there either. The parking would come in off the road or Street A on the south flank, and then move in interior to the condominium, where there'll be parking opposite those 7 townhouse units facing Ontario Street. Yeah, there will be some signage on Ontario Street. There'll be some walking access off of Ontario, but the parking and vehicle movements would be off of Ontario.
Okay, so those aren't parking spots that I'm seeing at the very front then, that's
Correct. Those are actually egress points.
Okay, I
Yeah,
see.
or not vehicle egress points, but
Gotcha.
walkways. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Still concerned just about the number of parking spots for 7 live-in works.
Yeah, I should have responded to that. Sorry. There was a supplemental report from the public meeting, since that was a comment, and that transportation engineering firm did add some extra detail there, and there is a requirement, I think 12 spots, but they've elected to provide 13. So the zoning dictates what parking is required in terms of numbers, and they've exceeded that by 1.
Thank you both. Anyone else with a question or comment on the motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next report is AMP, which stands for what? I should know this. Administrative Monetary Penalty for Parking Enforcement. Bylaw Enforcement Officer McGee, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing to add at this moment.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council direct staff to complete applications and submit them to the MTO and MAG, Ministry of Transportation and Ministry of Attorney General, for purposes of obtaining eligibility to access MTO vehicle data for enforcing parking through administrative penalties, and the council authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the respective agreements. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Good report, and I definitely prefer using AMPs to using POA. I'm just very curious because I don't see a lot of no parking signs around town. And I know that the Transportation Master Plan identified that we have more than ample parking downtown. Do we get a lot of parking tickets? And if so, where?
Bylaw Enforcement Officer McGee.
Through your worship, roughly 2025, we issued 45 parking tickets. I believe the year before was similar. It's roughly a mix between 2-hour parking and the winter parking. Might be the odd sidewalk, but yeah, that's basically the two that we issue the most from.
Thank you both. Council Wright.
I would like to suggest that you could increase those numbers. By a fair bit, just by the people who are legally parking in the accessible parking spots. It happens so much outside 82 Main Street that if you gave me a book, I could make you a whole lot of money. Just saying.
In another community, a store owner was deputized to do exactly that. So just leave that hanging out there for a second. Any other questions or comments from members of council? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is amendment to draft approval, zoning bylaw amendment, being Applewood Meadows Phase 4. Manager of Approvals, Warren. We've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Through your worship, the mayor. Nothing further from my perspective, but we do have a presentation from FOTEN,
And
the consultant.
same as before, though, we've seen this presentation through
I
the.
think it's slightly different, to be honest with you.
Okay, there are changes. Members of council, do you want to see because there are changes? Yeah, okay. Let's start there. And then I'll read the motion.
Just wait for presentation up on my screen. Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelsey Jones. I am a registered professional planner with FOTEN Planning and Design here this evening on behalf of the applicants. Also joined this evening with Cody Oram with the development group. I just have a few slides again, just to highlight some of the things that we heard from the last meeting and what we've done in an attempt to address the questions and concerns that were raised. So if we can go to the next, thank you. So just a quick overview again, the subject site for the current applications consists of a portion of Phase 4 of the Applewood Meadows and Orchard Gate Park subdivision. And this is outlined in red on the slide. So the Phase 4 lands were previously subject to planning approvals in 2022, which consisted of an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision. And the current applications before you this evening are for an amendment to that draft plan of subdivision, as well as a new zoning bylaw amendment, which seeks to make some redline revisions to parts of the draft plan based on the updated concept plan submitted, which generally seeks to permit a larger parkland block within the subdivision and to provide greater flexibility for housing typologies across the subdivision. And just to remind you, as you're aware, there was the public meeting held on the 8th of December. And like I said, I'll use this as an opportunity to address some of the things that we heard and the changes that we've made to the application since then. Next slide, please. Thank you. So regarding the parkland, there were comments in the December 8th staff report regarding the potential for the parkland block to be encumbered by the Butler Creek floodplain. So our engineers did review this and consulted with the Lower Trent Conservation Authority. and confirmed that the proposed parkland block is located fully outside of the floodplain. So the image on the right hand of the slide has the proposed park block outlined in green and shows the floodplain associated with Butler Creek in that light blue. So you can see that that floodplain is fully outside of the parkland block and will not encumber or impact it at all. And then also just reemphasizing in terms of the parkland, the current application for draft plan amendment seeks to provide a relocated and enlarged park block. So the images on the left of the slide show a comparison between the parkland block that was proposed and permitted through the previous draft plan of subdivision application, and then what is being proposed through the current application. So it's been relocated, enlarged quite significantly, and now represents about 7.2% parkland dedication, which exceeds the minimum requirement of 5%. We'll go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Regarding the additional dwelling units, so the updated plan of subdivision will incorporate a greater number of single detached and semi-detached dwellings compared to the previous plan. And this will support additional opportunities for additional residential units within the community, within this subdivision specifically. There's also draft conditions proposed as part of the applications, which would provide a target minimum of 10% of the ground-oriented residential built forms to incorporate additional dwelling units. So those are in there as well. And then as part of the current applications, we have submitted some preliminary floor plans, renderings to demonstrate the functionality, the feasibility of providing these additional residential units within the built forms that we are proposing. So those have already been contemplated at a preliminary level, recognizing that if we get to the next phase, we'll need to look into those in more detail, have those submitted and approved through the final plan of subdivision process. Go to the next slide, please. And then regarding residential diversity and density, so we did hear the concerns about the potential loss of residential units through these applications, and specifically the loss of the higher density residential built forms. So to address this, we have made revisions to the site-specific zoning that we're proposing. Specifically for the areas that are highlighted in orange on the image on the left-hand side of the screen. And what we're seeking to do is to broaden the range of permitted uses allowed in these areas. So these would include permissions for apartments, row houses, back-to-back row houses, stacked row houses, and stacked back-to-back row houses. So this will result in the opportunity for an increased number of residential dwellings within these areas in the subdivision. And then the table on this slide provides a bit of a numerical comparison. So you can see the number of units and the types of units that were approved in the draft plan approved plan in 2022, the types and the number of units that were proposed in the concept plan submitted with our original applications, and then following the public meeting, the changes that we've made to the zoning, how those are reflected and increase the number of possible units within the plan of subdivision. We'll go to the next slide, please. So in just a quick summary, the application seeks to facilitate a larger and relocated park block within the subdivision. We also seek to provide a greater mix and number of ground-oriented built forms, which will support additional dwelling units, as well as to provide a greater range of residential built forms at varying densities to support a range of possibilities for the build-out of this subdivision. And with that, appreciate everyone's attention. Happy myself or Cody, who's here this evening, if there's any questions that can't be addressed by municipal staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warren. Are staff satisfied that these alterations speak to both what we heard during the statutory public meeting and to the needs of the community and staff's requirements?
Through your worship, yes, we are satisfied at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Members of council, questions or comments before I read the motion, because I haven't done that yet. Go ahead, Councillor Rowley.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was nice to hear that you're trying to address the parkland concerns. Although I still think we're kind of short on that based on increased density, like lots more people, not enough green space. Still, I would ask staff, and I don't expect an answer tonight, what's the total area of green space parkland that we have in this whole subdivision? I still feel there's kind of like disconnected little blocks, and I think we need more. I would just like to have it reconsidered at some point. Thank you.
You're talking about the entire, from behind the White House all the way over. Mr. Warren, I'm assuming you don't have an answer to that question this evening.
I don't expect an answer this
I know you,
evening.
I know you don't. If you had one, we'd accept it, but would you be able to advise members of council through an email even of what that looks like?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. I suppose that this is one of those areas where we've got the 5% parkland comes from planning stuff, and our goals for the amount of parkland comes from the Parks Master Plan, and these are not necessarily the same metrics. So that's interesting. The thing that I wanted to say is how much I appreciate seeing our staff and the proponent, the developers, working together to make these changes. This is really, really encouraging. For folks who don't know, we're in this really weird stage of housing markets in Ontario where we actually have a lot of homes that have already been built that are sitting empty because people can't afford them. And so those developers are just sitting on loans that they can't repay until those homes sell. And so developers are loath to build things that they can't sell. At the same time, we also know that there's more pent-up demand for housing than there are available homes. And so we actually need more housing, even though the housing that we have isn't selling, because nobody can afford the homes that have already been built. And so we're in this weird position where we want developers to keep building more housing, even though they don't know if they're going to sell anything. And so to see flexibility, I spend way too much time looking at zoning bylaws from a lot of different municipalities, and I very rarely see any flexibility whatsoever. The nature of a zoning bylaw is you can't do anything except for the very specific things that we will allow in this space. And so to see a zoning bylaw, even a site-specific one that says, well, here's a range of things that you could do depending on your context and whether or not you've been able to sell anything or whether or not there's any demand for that particular built form is very exciting for me. And so I really appreciate you guys all working together. That's excellent work. I hope that we will be able to see housing come through at affordable enough rates and interest rates at affordable enough rates that the higher density models will be in high demand and you'll be able to sell them like hotcakes. That would be great for us and great for you. But seeing that flexibility there so that it works for you and it works for us is wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you for that. Councillor Rowley. You're good. Anyone else? Go ahead. Councillor McCausland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I'm not too sure who would answer this question, but since we're going up now, have we talked about privacy and looking down on others?
Manager Warren. I just don't know who else to take that to. So you get the hot
What was
seat.
the nature of the question that we're going?
Given that we're going up, have we given consideration for privacy for those who might be looking down into people's backyards?
It's always a consideration when you prepare the zoning bylaw in the first place. That's one of the reasons the setbacks are there. For the development that's proposed, I don't think there's anything higher than 3 stories at this juncture.
Does that satisfy your question? Thank you.
that's it.
Thank you both. Yeah. Anyone else? Well, then I'm going to read the motion now. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that the report of the Planning and Development Department dated March 9th, 2026 regarding proposed amendment to the Applewood Meadows draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications be received, and further that the draft plan of subdivision file number sub 2021-02 for lands located on part lot 5, plan 2839R 13304 in the municipality of Brighton be draft approved subject to the revised conditions attached to this report. And further that council enacts the zoning bylaw to rezone the subject lands to the residential 2 exception number 48 zone, residential 4 exception number 6 zone, open space zone and environmental protection zone as detailed in this report. And further, that council authorize staff to provide notice of draft approval and zoning bylaw amendment for the subject development in accordance with the Planning Act. Any questions or comments from members of council based on that motion? Councillor Rowley.
Going back to the parkland, so if we approve this tonight, there's no opportunity for us to ask for a wee bit more parkland space?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Butwell.
Thank you, through you to Councillor Rowley. I was not around when phase 1 and 2, phase 1 for sure, was being built. Was there an under allocation for parkland at the time?
No, I think in some of the cases we accepted cash in lieu. Director Walsh, is that correct?
To the mayor to council, yes, that's correct. And some of the open space areas associated with phases 1 and phases 2, in the subdivision agreement, it reads that it's actually meant to be a private open space area, not to be dedicated to the municipality.
Right.
So there's a bit of a breakup in the whole park system in that area. I think the proponents who still own fee simple in those lands are now exploring maybe conveying the municipality for other purposes and reasons, but as a decision stands historically, it's not meant to be conveyed to municipality.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Actually.
And then I think it was in the last term of council, we started asking, shying away from cash in lieu and looking toward more actual parkland in neighborhoods.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor. The master plan called for 4 hectares per 1,000 population. And that master plan looked at the shortcomings or discrepancies that we have, and also asked for some minimum park space in terms of hectares per park, and discouraged parkettes and that sort of thing. In the instance of Applewood Phase 4, they were before the Parks Master Plan came into place. And so we had that tiny little parkette in the previous version. So this is an improvement, and I think it does add some continuity with the Phase 3 parkland to the east of it. So there will be it does represent an improvement, but going forward for new plans of subdivision will be more focused on the intentions of the master plan in terms of adding more park space. And we'll see that in the secondary plan.
And in fairness to the last policy, which was to accept cash in lieu, the intent was to buy a large parcel of land and create a large park, which makes sense on one level, but certainly not from a neighborhood perspective or creating a wholesome and whole neighborhood. So that's why we've reverted back to the other way, which is in keeping with the Parks Master Plan as well. Welcome. Anyone else? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next report is public consultation, parking bylaw review, bylaw enforcement officer Shepherd. We've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council authorizes staff to proceed with public consultation through posting on the municipal website, distribution through the municipality's social media as available, and by distributing the proposed parking bylaw review survey to residents, businesses, and stakeholders. Or is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next item is the new animal control bylaw. Bylaw enforcement officer Shepherd. We've read this report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, Mayor, yes, I do have just one thing to add here. That was unintentionally omitted from the report. I just wanted to add just a summary quickly on what the costs were for this contract. So the actual animal control contract is $25,000 for the year. And that is billed quarterly at an amount of $6,250. And then there's also an additional $1,100 monthly to pay for the additional building. So this is a total of $13,200. And the intention of this is to limit to 1 year while the shelter conducts their expansion. So this was put in place so that they could offer CAT services to Brighton because of overcrowding issues. It's the intention that when we're renegotiating in future years, if we choose to move forward, that this will reduce back down to the baseline of 25,000. And all of this has been included in the 2026 municipal budget.
Could you repeat that last line for me, please?
Just that this amount has been reflected in the 2026 municipal budget.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The motion is moved by Councillor Boutwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland. The council receives a staff report number PD 2025-178 regarding the passing of a new animal control bylaw to regulate cats and dogs within the municipality of Brighton, and that council passes the proposed animal control bylaw as shown on this agenda, and that council approve the proposed contract with the Northumberland Humane Society for the 2026 year, and that council directs staff to monitor the effectiveness of the cat control program for the 2026 year. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wright.
I just wanted to say thank you to the bylaw officers who put this together. This one's very near and dear to my heart. Cats are very much an issue across the board for wildlife populations, in particular birds, which of course everybody knows is near and dear to my heart. And it's just so much more improved. It's not so cat light anymore, so thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. There are no items for information purposes listed. There's nothing listed under unfinished business, which brings us to bylaws. The first bylaw is with regard to Applewood Meadows Phase 4. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 140-2002 as amended of the corporation of the municipality of Brighton as it applies to certain lands identified as Part 1 of 39R 6003, known as Phase 4 of the Applewood Meadows Plan of Subdivision in the municipality of Brighton. This bylaw will change the zoning for the subject lands to a site-specific urban residential 2 zone, a site-specific urban residential 4 zone, and open space zone. Is there any discussion from members of council? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Next bylaw is zoning bylaw amendment for 214 Ontario Street. It's moved by Councillor Boutwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to regulate the use of land and use of buildings and structures within the municipality of Brighton for the zoning of the lands located at 214 Ontario Street. Amendment to bylaw 140-2002 as amended. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next is a bylaw for the official plan amendment for 214 Ontario Street. It's moved by Councillor Wright, and I will need a seconder. That council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw of the municipality of Brighton to adopt an amendment to the municipality of Brighton official plan pursuant to Section 21 of the Planning Act as amended in respect of the lands municipally identified as 214 Ontario Street, municipality of Brighton. Is there a seconder to that motion? Thank you, Councillor McCausland. Discussion. Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. The next bylaw is the animal control bylaw. It's moved by Councillor Wheeldon, seconded by Councillor McCausland. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to license, regulate, and control certain animals within the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? Councillor Boutwell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering, we have a member of our community who was integral in the bringing this inclusion of the cats in the bylaw around, and I know she was hoping to ask a question, make a comment prior to prior to us passing the motion. And I'm wondering if we could suspend the rules and just hear from her very quickly now.
Members of council,
We
you okay
heard
with that?
from another person on,
We did, because there was a change, but
yeah.
come on, Deb.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Debbie Perry. I am a resident in Brighton, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you. This means a lot. And I just wanted to put this out as a little personal note. Martin Field, who was an instrumental part of this, is terminal and is not long on this earth. So this is going to mean the absolute world to him. This is part of his legacy now. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I had a question. I don't know if this is the right time for it or if it's the right context. I recently had someone reached out to me. They had contacted bylaw about an issue with cats on their property that had been abandoned by some neighbors. And they were informed that their name had to be presented to the neighbors. They have a very toxic relationship with the neighbors. So I'm just wondering if this is going to affect how the new bylaw has come into place. Like, do people have to identify themselves? Like, hi, I'm Debbie Perry. I'm calling because A, B, and C. If you're having issues with your community, your neighbors.
Director Walsh. We're not going to delve too deeply into this.
So normally if we encourage to receive complaints in writing and have that person identify who they are, but we also tell the person subject to the complaint that that's confidential, that won't be given to them. The only time that person might end up coming forward through a procedure is if there's need for them to give evidence in court.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's no sharing of that.
Okay, thank you. I don't think they were quite clear on that, so they didn't do a report. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just to be clear, staff won't share it with the neighbor, but if the neighbor gets charged and takes it to court, the person may be asked to appear in court to give evidence.
Yeah, I understand that.
Which is why we need the information.
Yes, I understand that. They were just under the impression that the neighbor would be contacted and told, this person has an issue with you. So thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for your thanks. We take the good news too. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. The next is with regard to a bylaw for animal control and pound services agreement. It's moved by Council Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. That council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the Northumberland Humane Society as the animal control and pound services provider for the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. That brings us to question period. If anyone in the gallery has a question with anything that appeared on tonight's agenda, please approach. There's no one online for that purpose. No, thank you. And our confirmatory bylaw is moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Butwell, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this day, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of a corporation of the municipality of Brighton planning meeting held on March 9th, 2026. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the March 9th council planning meeting adjourn at 7:14 p.m. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?